good field for the Tanzanians, who we're all looking at to see how they're going to do it, and the main British guys will be watching each other and seeing who's going to make that Olympic team that we're not really sure how it's going to be selected, but we'll talk about that later.
Meanwhile, they're still pouring through the start. And indeed, the two starts take about 7 or 8 minutes to clear. But it's a marvellous piece of organisation. Those are the slower runners streaming across the far side of Blackheath Common. Meanwhile, the starters on the slow area, well, I find it very hard work in getting through the gates there, but they're being released now, and it's marvellous the way this is organised, just holding them back so they can go freely through and there's no traffic jam at all.
Bobbing and weaving their way, carrying their banners, letting the world know that this is their big day. Months of preparation, wondering now whether it's been enough. Vaseline on all the working parts, one hopes, and some of them still wearing their plastic max because it is a chilling wind, which may affect the tail enders, the very slow runners, the very slow joggers, and those that have to walk part of the course. It may affect them later on. Plenty of energy at the moment.
Meanwhile, far ahead at Woolwich, two leading girls, and as we suspected, Mary Cotton, formerly Mary Stewart of Birchfield Harriers, taking Christiansen along. They're hoping to get near that world best. That's the 2-mile mark, and we'll give you the time in just a moment. Meanwhile, the pack still streaming through at the start, and the men in the elite race are approaching the mile mark. Those are the last runners in the experienced pack crossing the line as the leaders from that start approach the mile mark. Slower start, well, they're much more slowly away. And they should take about some 8 or 9 minutes to clear. That's the roundabout at about half a mile. The underpass going through to the Blackwall Tunnel. And so we can join the head of the race now as the athletes begin to settle down. Among that leading group is number 6, Chris Bunyan of Southampton AC. Kanga there wearing number 2. Also up there, Dave Murphy of Liverpool Harriers, who's back from Louisville in the States. There's Christiansen of Norway wearing, there's Bari, Kjeld of Denmark, Kjeld Johansen. Number 2 there, Kanga. We expected him to try and cut it out. And we should have the mile time very shortly.
In the green shorts there, that's Grenville Wood of Australia, trying to qualify for the Australian team, wearing 2:20. The Vikings up at the tail end. I think they're going to walk the first mile, but they are the tail enders coming through the gate now. And as that pack unwinds, so they'll begin their long route home. About 26 miles to go, and they too are in good voice. period of bobbing heads.
The lead is there on the Halley tally shot, and they've gone through in a very steady pace indeed for the first mile, 5 minutes dead. Now, even pace running 5 minutes would bring them in 2 hours and 11 minutes approximately, but they're bound to speed up at some stage. But it's a sensible start because most of these athletes are very experienced and know they need to do the running in the later stages. The Kanga there wearing number 2, always a front runner from Tanzania. Alongside him, Bari, fellow Tanzania. Grenville Wood of Australia in the green shorts. Number 29 is Berger of Norway. Magnani of Italy is right up there as well. He's wearing number 9. Dave Murphy of Liverpool Harriers in tremendous form in the States. Recently beat Bari over 10 miles. He's only run one marathon. Murphy is wearing 8. He's among that leading pack. His only marathon, he was second in Sydney in just over 2 hours, 11 minutes. Wearing 20 there is Lavenborg of Denmark. So a lot of the overseas athletes in that leading group, and a word from Brendan Foster.
Well, all the discussion yesterday was about the Tanzanians, how fast they were going to go, because we've seen them run 2 hours 6 pace, which is 2 minutes faster than the world record for a marathon in marathons recently that they've been running. So everyone was saying that, you know, if the Tanzanians go off quickly, we're going to let them go. But it looks like they've gone off very conservatively today, and all the main British contenders who are in there for a place in the Olympic marathon later in the year in Los Angeles, within that group, they've noticed that the pace is okay, so they're starting to relax. They're starting to look at the Tanzanians to see if there's anything that they can learn about them, see if there's anything they can do about the pace. But I think this group is big enough, which suggests that even the second mile, it hasn't really increased in pace. And the main contenders already are poised in that second, just behind the leading group, behind Magnani of Italy in the blue vest, number 9, and right next to Grenville Wood of Australia. But Charlie Spedding, Dave Long, Chris Bunyan, Mike Grattan there on the outside, last year's winner, and the red vest and the black shorts. So I think they're quite happy. Right next to him is Jerry Helm, who was second in last year's marathon. I think they're very, very pleased so far that the Tanzanians have run conservatively.
Up there as well is number 8, Nick Braun, and also Jim Dingwall, who's wearing number 14, the Scottish athlete with the beard. And that leading pack, there's about 20 or 30, contain all the fancied runners. Actually, they're approaching the 2 mile point at Woolwich Barracks, and they've just gone through, and the time 10 minutes 10 seconds. So the second mile slower still, 5 minutes for the first, 5.5 for the second. So it's very, very, very conservative.
It may be a problem for Grenville Wood, the man in the green shorts wearing 2:20. He was the winner of the Australian marathon in 2 hours 15:50, and the selector suggested it's not fast enough for his Olympic selection. He's got to go 2:14 or faster. So he'll be hoping that Ikanga or Zachary Abari, either of the Tanzanians, will pick the pace up a little bit to give him a fighting chance. He won't want to run it from the front, but they'll want to pick it up at some time.
Woolwich Barracks with its parade ground, and they're approaching the first feeding station. And of course the wise ones will take time out to get as much liquid on board as early as possible.
Actually, these Tanzanians, I've seen them running 4:40 and well under 10 minutes for the first 2 miles of a marathon. And I wonder if they're a little bit subdued, because I was with them yesterday when their manager learned that Juma Ikanga, who's one of the world's leading marathon runners, found out that his roommate, Michael Makanya, who'd done 2:12 for a marathon very recently in Vienna, was actually shot dead out training in Tanzania on Thursday. He was mistaken for a burglar, and they couldn't believe it when they read in The Guardian yesterday that this man had been killed. Now, I wonder if that's had any effect on them, because they are very, very sensitive people.
Saw a glimpse of the bird paw gun captured at the siege of 1826. won't bother the marathon runners as they approach the point where they swing left into John Wilson Street, and just beyond that, the point where the two packs converge. Bari moving very smoothly, Akanga's going well. Number 6, Chris Bunyan of Southampton at University in America. 9 is Magnani, famous Italian athlete, just beaten in a photo finish by Charlie Spedding in America last season. Meanwhile, as the readers pound their way past Woolwich Barracks, the first feeding station, the masses behind go along at their own pace. And indeed, that pace is dictated by the number of runners. There's no question of these athletes going too fast too soon.
There's also no question of any of these people even thinking about the Olympic Games in Los Angeles. They'll all be interested in their own performance today and their own progress in the marathon. But you're absolutely right that they can't do anything about the pace because there's a solid wall of bodies ahead of them. So all they got to do is just drift along at the right pace. And actually, that's quite good for them because in the later stages, when it strings out, it means that they've hopefully got some energy left and they're not going to hurt too much in the latter part of the race.
Actually, most of these athletes are sponsored, of course, and it's estimated that they'll raise some £4 to £5 million for various charities. The biggest group is well, nearly 1,000 running for the Sports Aid Foundation, and there's something right about every few years these fun runners trying to help our top athletes and sportsmen, amateur sportsmen, with their preparation training.
It's even getting competitive as to how many runners you've got in your sponsored group. The Marathon group reckon they've got as many out for muscular dystrophy as the Sports Aid Foundation. There's Jimmy Savile with his group, but there is a tremendous giving today. 4 to 5 million. There can't be many occasions when that amount of money can be raised in one single day. And tremendous atmosphere prevails when all these runners know that they're gaining something themselves, but they're also giving out.
Well, back at the start, the last athletes are through, and the clean-up process begins. It's a massive operation. Masterpiece of organisation. 1:4:16. It's Colin Hassel. Comes from Guildford. How far he'll go like that, goodness knows, but my word, it must be uncomfortable.
Be some effort if he gets all the way around, I'll tell you that.
There, what has been described as the 8th wonder of the world. Opened last week by Her Majesty the Queen, the flood barrier on the Thames. The athletes won't quite see that, but they do run alongside the Thames on Woolwich Docks, now disused, passing Warspite Road. And in fact, in the Royal Navy, until recent years, there's always been a battleship called Warspite, going back to the Hearts of Oak. Now this is the point where the two packs converge, but of course the slower pack, which will be running on the near side of the road, hasn't arrived there yet. And it looks as if there's a slight break developing. In fact, the pedal is probably going down slightly after that fairly modest first 2 miles. And both the Tanzanians are up there with the leaders, but they are beginning to press it now. Grenville Wood of Australia, Bari of Tanzania, Ikanga of Tanzania. Also there is Lavenborg of Denmark. Number 29 is Berger of Norway. And this could be quite a significant move. One of the wheelchair competitors who started 5 minutes before on the slower route. And the girls, of course, started some 10 minutes before the men. And we're told that Christiansen of Norway and Mary Cotton of Birchfield are way out in front. This is where the two routes come together, and for about another half mile to 1 mile, they run on either side of the dual carriageway before joining up. The fast athletes, they went through the first mile in 5 minutes, The second mile was running 5:10, and they've just run the third mile, as I suspected, very much faster. So the screw is slightly being turned. 4:46 for the third mile.
That's stretching them a little, I fancy. The Norwegians, incidentally, using this for their Olympic trial, as well as Great Britain and the Australians. So it's a real racing occasion, is this. Something under 2:12 would be expected for the Olympians.
Very, very international field, this. There are some Chinese in this race as well, by the way. And there's 26, Liang. Su Liang. He's got a best time at 2:13. And very shortly, the leading girls in the elite race will be Cutty Sark on the 6 mile point. That's looking up the road from the Cutty Sark, just beyond the 6 mile point. And this leading group really are beginning to stretch out. That third mile in 4:46 has put paid to quite a number already, who've either elected not to go with the pace or can't go with the pace. That's Ikanga leading. Bari and the red-banded vest. Between them, Wood of Australia, then Berger of Norway. So in fact, we can just go ahead and preview what the athletes are going to see.
The Prime Meridian here at Greenwich is celebrating its centenary year. As every schoolboy knows, a meridian is a circle which passes over both north and south poles, and the points on the surface of the Earth immediately below form the lines of longitude. Bradley's meridian, the line first used, was found to be 19 feet out of true, but is still used on Ordnance Survey maps. Below the Royal Observatory, founded in 1675, is the Queen's House, which was built for Anne of Denmark in 1617, opposite the Royal Naval College, originally Greenwich Hospital, designed by Sir Christopher Wren, who had been told to leave unobstructed the view of the River Thames. Our runners passed by here on their way to the Cutty Sark, the last and the most famous of the tea clippers. It was built at Dumbarton on the River Clyde, and her name comes from Robert Burns' poem Tam O'Shanter. The figurehead is that of a white witch catching hold of a horse's tail. Inside now is a museum housing a marvellous collection of carved painted figureheads and prints showing the Cutty Sark as she used to be. When launched 115 years ago, she was meant for the tea trade between China and Britain. Shortly after, though, the Suez Canal was opened, which meant that the steamers were faster, so she took on the wool trade between London and Australia, cutting the journey time of other ships by weeks. Moored close by is Gypsy Moth IV, the yacht in which Sir Francis Chichester circumnavigated the world single-handed in 1966 and 7.
The leading men still some 2 miles away from that point, but the leading girls, who started 10 minutes earlier, will be approaching the Cutty Sark very shortly. That's Bari on the right as we look in, and Ikanga of Tanzania being tracked by the Chinese Su Liang. And certainly the pace increasing all the time. Berger of Norway in the all blue, and the tiny figure alongside him wearing number 6 is Chris Bunyan, who's the first of the British athletes at the moment.
Mike Karifalidis, I think, the wheelchair athlete, trying to keep up with the leading runners and keeping going well. Haringey athlete and an experienced wheelchair marathon man. Meanwhile, the pack is still pouring past Woolwich Barracks. with its magnificent facade. Spirit still high. Great act of faith here.
This a sight one wouldn't have dreamt of just a few years ago. Which gives those of us who've been involved in track and field for years enormous pleasure.
One often used to wonder about one's own motivation. It was always sort of high-level competition. And when you talk to these people and you say, hey, you know, why do you do it if there's 15,000 people ahead of you? And they all come up with the same kind of answer, that it's the challenge of the thing that really keeps them going and makes them interested in this event.
Patrick Musters wants to be remembered. We certainly remember him.
And so, as the stragglers go past the 2-mile point, the leading ladies are now approaching Cutty Sark. They've just gone through 6 miles, and the two leaders still the same two. The two we expected, Ingrid Christiansen and Mary Cotton. They've not gone too far away, and the time is fairly quick. Christiansen is looking for a fast time, and she's believed to be capable of setting a new world best.
This is the first time I've seen pacemaking in a marathon take place as efficiently as this, because Mary Cotton, formerly Commonwealth 1500 metres champion, who's recently come back to international athletics, has agreed to take Ingrid Christiansen through the halfway stage in 1 hour 11 minutes, which is on schedule for Joan Benoit's world best of 2:22, which is considerably faster than Greta Waitz ran last year here in London. Right back from the leading women, the leading men are still increasing their pace. You can tell by the fact that the gaps are opening, and the two Tanzanians who train a lot together when they're back in Tanzania in the training camps are quite happy rolling along there. Ikanga doesn't like anyone in front of him. He'll tolerate his friends right next to him, but apparently, according to people like Grenville Wood, who've tried to run ahead of him, they just have absolutely no chance.
The leading girls are now some 20 yards ahead of the chasing pair. F1, Ingrid Christiansen. F24, Mary Cotton. Mary, the former Commonwealth Games 1500 metres champion. And the timing car at this point, of course, can't get round Cutty Sark, so it takes a shortcut and picks them up as they take this little detour.
The crowd growing as they get nearer to central London. It'd be lovely if Mary Cotton can recapture some of her former glory. Remember, she's the sister of Ian Stewart and Peter Stewart, that remarkable Stewart family, run for Birchfield. If she can hang on to Ingrid Christiansen, it will be a tremendous race, and it will certainly be a lifetime best for her. Here she is, Christiansen on the left, Mary Cotton on the right.
For 1 hour 11 minutes, the halfway point, and they're on schedule for that. See the third and fourth go through.
Sarah Rowell, I think, with the headband.
Back on the main route again now, and they're already, those four, a long way ahead. Well, back to the men, and they're approaching well, about 5 miles I suppose now. In fact, they should be just beyond it. We've not had a 5-mile time. The two Tanzanians clear, being chased by Bunyan. David Murphy's up there as well. The man who beat Barry over 10 miles in America recently.
Interesting, these two Tanzanians, Ikanga, who wears 2, he's home-based in Tanzania. He lives at Arusha, which is Philbert Bayi's birthplace. Philbert Bayi being the man, he's a great hero, a Commonwealth 1500-metre runner who broke a world record in Christchurch. And Zachariah Barry, who wears 15 on the right, he's based at the University of Texas at El Paso. but returns to Tanzania, to altitude, as Brendan Foster was saying, to train in their training camps, right on the in the shadow of Mount Kilimanjaro. Absolutely ideal conditions. Hot and dry, but at about 6,000 feet, and both these men are in cracking form.
And as they race their way on towards the 6 mile mark, the athletes wisely, the fun runners, taking on board liquid at the first feeding station after just 2 miles. Crowd waiting there for the main race to come through. And some of the girls Jacobsen of Norway. Angela Ford. Angela Hearn rather just gone through. F27. Alison Goodham. Girls all running in the Women's 3As Championship, and also, of course, there are 3 Olympic places available.
Valerie Howe was 77, she went through. The Bracknell girls, 79. Annette Roberts, Borough of Hounslow, all the clubs will be there.
Jones approaching Calisar. One of the Italian girls up there. Emma Skornic.
And Heidi Jacobsen of Norway just gone through wearing 12, the 27-year-old, who's a 2:40 girl. 16th in the 83 New York Marathon. There she is.
Meanwhile, at the feeding station at 2 miles, the Kangaroo taking liquid on board, and no wonder. The 2 Tanzanians still cutting out the pace, and the pace is getting fast. 5 minutes the first mile, 5:10 the second, then suddenly they threw in 4:46. The 4th mile was run in 4:42, and the 5th mile in 4:52, and that's done the damage. So they threw 5 miles in 24 minutes 32 seconds. And now approaching the 6 mile mark. In the chasing group, we've got Nick Braun, Chris Bunyan, and David Murphy. The Army cleaning up at the feeding station. And certainly that first feeding station at 2 miles has been kept very, very busy indeed.
This is the less glamorous end of the thing, when you have to clean up after these runners have thrown water and drinks and orange juice and everything over you. And that's what happens, because I've spoken to people who do this job, and it looks like they have to get Army volunteers to do it these days. We used to get the Boy Scouts and the Cubs doing it in the Great North Run, but now they've got to force people to do this, because it's not a very pleasant task, Ron.
That's the Royal Artillery doing a great job. They'll be looking out for the Gurkhas, though. I bet they give them a wave when they go through. The Gurkhas are here again. Kadisak coming up for these girls. And the men overtaking the back markers of the women. The 2 Tanzanians just threading their way through.
Due to the 6 mile time, they went through 5 miles to 6 miles in 4:43, so this pace is now very, very hard indeed. And 6 miles, 29 minutes, 15 seconds. They're heading at the moment for something in the region of 2 hours 9, which would be a course record. Meanwhile, we've got a walker at Blackheath. He's the last man in the race. Patrick Fury, London Transport, comes from North Mims. Actually, he's got a best marathon time of 3 hours 1 minute, which is quite respectable, but he's not on course for that today.
I think he might overtake a few before the end of the day, though.
The men now having rounded Cutty Sark, and these Tanzanians a daunting sight for the chasing group. And for the British athletes in this, well, they've got a very important question to ask themselves, because can they afford to chase the Tanzanians when Olympic places are at stake? They're racing each other, which is much more important, really, from their point of view, than chasing the Tanzanians. And it's significant that Britain's 2 fastest marathon runners at the moment, Jeff Smith, who's our fastest marathon runner ever from Liverpool Harriers, now based in the States, and Hugh Jones, who set the course record in this London Marathon 2 years ago and has been in fast form recently. Those 2 athletes have elected not to run and to rest on the times they've clocked already. So the athletes here could be running for a single place.
That's the dilemma, because not only does that mean that the Britons have to finish in the first 3 here, but it also means that the time they run is important. And it's interesting to me to watch the 3 Britons who are following these 2 Tanzanians are all American-based athletes. There's Adrian Leake from Cardiff, there's Dave Murphy from Liverpool Harriers, and there's Chris Bunyan from Southampton. But they're all based in the States. They all run against this Zachary Barry quite often. And they're looking at each other. They know what kind of pace they've got to run. And the other Britons, the home-based Britons, Mike Grattan, Charlie Spedding, Kevin Forster, and people like that seem to be off that second group. So already there's a race on, and there's 2 races. There's a race for the winner, but there's a race for the British team.
Last lady going through Woolwich Barracks after 2 miles, an Italian girl, Antonio Baldisarotto. She's aiming for a time of about 3 hours 30 minutes, but I suggest it's going to be more like 5 hours. The faster male athletes now caught the girls, the slower girls who started 10 minutes before. But the leading 2 girls, Christensen and Cotton, way out in front.
The good club runners here know what they're doing. Very experienced. Conditions good.
The field already stretched out in the first few miles with some, 5 miles between the leaders and the last athlete. And that's after just over 7 miles. All these fixed points important to the athletes, all checking their times and making sure that they're keeping on a sensible schedule.